The local art scene, I think Damien and Kim's collection represents the African diaspora really vastly. They have really significant works from a lot of really major African American as well as African and other African diasporan artists. And then Zach and Robin are burgeoning, jumping into the collecting scene. So we thought it would be interesting to just, have a dialogue, amongst us, representing a sort of full spectrum of the collecting journey. So to start out, I'd like to ask both the Fishers as well as the Wallaces to maybe talk about what was the first piece that sparked your journey into collecting?
The first piece that we actually owned was a piece that I bought for Kim when she graduated from Clark College. So it was Ernie Barnes, The Graduate. I went to, what was the name of the place? No. I went to a place that was off of Abilene. And I bought a piece from that place. And she graduated before I did, so it was a bittersweet moment, but she cherished that piece. That piece is still in our collection, and it's a beautiful piece. I have it in my office, as a matter of fact. So when people come to our house, I'm always telling them, and it's downstairs in the basement, tucked in the corner. You wouldn't even notice it, but it is the foundation of our collection.
Excuse me. For me, the first real piece that I bought was actually, because we had art in our house, but it was like Z Gallery art, and I thought, I was impressed because Robin was buying it, and I'm like, yeah, it's nice. The zebra, but y'all remember the Banjo Man? Everybody had a Banjo Man. And then I started going to different galleries and seeing what real art looked like, and I was like, wow, like we gotta step it up. So, but you gotta, wherever you are, wherever your barrier of entry, your point is, like getting in, you know what I'm saying? And so one day I was downtown and I stumbled across a gallery from the homeless people. They had converted their space into the place where, what's a better word for homeless? What is it? Unhoused. Where unhoused artists could come and exhibit their work. And I went in there and I bought a piece for $800. I was so impressed. And this piece is still like the anchor of our collection. This beautiful piece, and actually, come to find out years later, the guy who I had this piece of was a fellow, his student. Our kids were students at the same school, and I saw him in the carpool line one day. And I said, hey man, she on my wall, he couldn't believe it. But nonetheless, it's like, and since then, I always think back to that experience, because you always like, the last thing you do is you buy what you art. You know what I'm saying? It's like after you finish all the mental calculations and whatever process you have, buy what you art. Buy what you love.
So thank you for that. And I think it's really, it's a really interesting journey to watch collections evolve. I think a lot of times when someone starts buying art, particularly when they're buying from their heart, they don't necessarily know where the collection is taking them, right? Like it's just something that you're doing, and then you look back, after a couple of years, you look back at the things that you purchased, and it starts to tell you a story, right? And so I'd like to, just kind of follow up, and the Galbreaths, feel free to chime in on this as well. But what you feel is the story now that you've had some time to begin creating, building this collection? What story do you feel like your collection is telling? And what is it? Is it a story about you? Is it a story about community? Is it a story about, what story do you feel like your collection is telling?
I'll say that the clarity of our collection wasn't really defined until I met a gentleman in New York. This gentleman, we were invited to come up to New York by Frank Frazier, who's in Dallas, Texas. I'm not sure if you guys know his work. Frank is an amazing artist out of Dallas, Texas. So Frank invites us up to New York. I go up, and the gentleman invites us into his home, and on the walls we see Charles White. I mean, the entire apartment was all Charles White. So this gentleman turns out to be Russell Cohen, who is the preeminent collector, you know, in the world. So he sits us down and he tells us about, he interviews us basically. He's like, what are you doing? We said we're collecting art. You know, we like art, we like what we see, we like getting to know the artists. And he said, well, what are you really doing? He said, there has to be a reason for what you're doing, and you have to figure out how you can take this to the next level. So he clarified for us one thing after we left and we returned back to Atlanta. I had to sit down and say to myself, you know, why do we have these things? Because these are just things, right? These are things that people are creating, but truly it's telling a story. For me, I think that it's telling the story of our people. It's documenting. It's going to be something that I can leave behind for, you know, whoever that can understand where we come from, where we're going, you know, the trials and tribulations that we've been through. It also shows the joy that comes out of our community. So that's where I think.
And I think we had an interesting story that kind of aligns with yours. We had been collecting for a little while. And Kevin Cole, one of the artists in the collection, but also quite a mentor to George as an artist, to us as collectors, he said, what are you doing? Who are you collecting? Why are you collecting work? Like, what's the through line of the work that you're collecting? And to Fahamu's point, like, you're doing this thing for a little while, and then it's what story is being told. Not what story are you telling, but what story is being told that you may not have thought about or you may not have considered. And for us, we were gravitating toward these artists that we were meeting in community, in this Atlanta arts community, which, again, is just this beautiful, welcoming place. And so that became kind of like what our collection, like what is Atlanta, what is happening now, how is it being documented, what artists are doing what, like who's on this emerging art scene, and how are they telling this narrative, and how can we be good stewards of that work in this time?
I would say for us, I think it's pieces that, when I see my art, you know, I think about the joy that it brings me, and ultimately how I see myself in those pieces, and how I want my children, when they're looking at the pieces, how they can see themselves in the pieces. So, you know, there's one piece that we have that you did for our Jack and Jill chapter, Quiet Power, and the piece is of a woman and you can't see her face, but she has her hand on her son's shoulders, and you can see his face. And so that's so important for me to be able to look at that piece and see my journey as a mother in that piece, and also see that I am building, you know, a Black leader. And so, you know, being able to see those pieces that bring me so much joy every day as I look around my house, and then knowing that my children are able to just see themselves in those pieces is so important.
For me, kind of piggybacking on what Damien said, when we met Russell, the thing that was so interesting was that he interviewed us for 2 days. We never talked about dollar. He interviewed us. And the one thing he said to us that was powerful was, you have a responsibility to be caretakers. You have a responsibility to educate. You have a responsibility to share. It's great that you want to be a collector, but who's going to know about it if you don't share it? So I thought that was a very pivotal moment for us, you know, in our collection.
I love that. Were you going to say something?
No, that's good.
Okay. I love that you introduced that word caretaker. The term, we hear this term all the time, curator, right? Curator this, curator that. The word curator literally means caretaker, right? And I think it's imperative that we understand that in collecting art, that is essentially what we're doing. We become stewards of our culture. Because as we all know, in the future, historians will tell what happened, but artists tell how it felt. Right? And so if we aren't the ones who are the caretakers of our story, then someone else gets to tell our story. And I guarantee you they're not going to tell it the way we would, right? And so this kind of leads me to the next, point. We kind of touched on this a little bit when we were speaking with the Galbreaths about the commodification of art. But one of the things that has always been the biggest, a big challenge to me is the ways in which the value of our art is positioned. And I think oftentimes we don't see the value in what we do until somebody else comes along who has a certain sort of like cachet or visibility, and then we're like, oh, they want that piece, now I want it, right? As an artist who's moving and trying to get into collections and things like that, I begin to understand how, we can become our own advocates that promote and push the work forward in ways which don't require these gatekeepers who are more often than not as concerned with our narrative, our journey, our livelihood. And so I'd like to maybe ask you all to talk about your notion of how you are evaluating the work that you're doing in collecting, but also, as we've seen with the Galbreath collection and championing the type of work that they are doing and the arts that they're doing, but also how we are thinking about positioning your collection in the future to be these kind of stakeholders in this narrative of our experience.
No question. Man, I'm coming today. Well, let me say this. Like, I had to, it's a strategy to buying, right? You know what I'm saying? I think everybody should have a strategy. Don't overcomplicate it. What you spend on a vacation, you know what you spend on, a holiday or what have you, right? So, identifying your budget, right? And your budget should be your strategy, align with your strategy of where your entry point for new art is, right? And if you go outside of that, then it gotta really make sense. You gotta really know that this is a good deal. You know what I'm saying? And it gotta be supported by the current works they're selling. You know what I'm saying? And just you knowing a lot, being more intimate with the artist. Because like George said earlier, you buy a piece from somebody. You at every event, right? You know what I'm saying? So you start to, once you're in that ecosystem, you start to see who people are collecting, who people are talking about. Different galleries you go in, you're seeing what the work is moving for, and whatever your source is that you trust. But for me, the strategy that I am on in this early phase of our journey is buying at a certain point to where I feel like I can't lose. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can't lose. It's not a piece that I purchased that I'm just like, dang, why buy it? I step out there like, honestly, every piece that I have on our walls, except for, we finally got the zebra down. And that zebra brought me more heartburn pieces I paid 100 times more, because I was like, why are you here? But when you purchase in your budget, within your price point, and I'm not gonna say what you can afford, right? Because you can afford what you want, right? But it's having a budget, a strategy, and staying within that, and then finding something that brings you joy. You can never lose. You know what I'm saying? You own it. And as it rises and as it appreciates, you're along for the ride. You just, you know what I'm saying? So you like a little piggy hanging outside the window saying, wee! It's like, that's it. And that's what I advise everybody to do. Because the rest of it is so much to consume, it drives you crazy. If you're trying to, come in and get rich buying art. That shouldn't be your goal.
No, I was just going to add to that because, we've been blessed to also have people in our family who are helping us on this journey. And so my cousin owns a gallery in Harlem, and he's a collector, advisor, and all these things. And so he has some, really, really big artists in his collection. And so he definitely will tell us about the value and the potential there. But then we also learned very early on to just buy what we love and buy who we love. And so I think that's a big part of our strategy. It's to Zach's point, if we're buying what's in our budget and we love the person, then we know we don't lose no matter what.
I like that idea. I'm thinking no buyer's remorse. It's important. One of the things I thought about when you were asking that question, Fahamu, is earlier we had a lesson for the high school students, right? And thank you, by the way, for encouraging some folks to come out. But we had some young teens, and we were talking to them about collecting artwork. And it really does start with them. Like there's this wheel, and they're a part of that, and we got to understand that they are the next collectors, right? And during that lesson, we talked more so about them placing value on the work, like them coming in and saying, how much am I willing to sacrifice for this piece? How much is it worth to me? So they're actually placing that value, like you said, before somebody tells them, oh, this is worth this much. And they said some profound things. I was really excited about it. And by the way, I'm sorry. Shout out to Westlake High School, by the way. Just want to let y'all know that's where I teach at. Kept the code but my bad, that was outside. But when we pour into the youth, and when we pour into emerging collectors, and when we transition through that cycle, I think that's when we really start to, increase the value.
So, for me, the commodification of art is kind of, it starts off with an intrinsic value for me. When I think about how we introduce our collection to possibly our community, we participated in with Lovett School during the month of February, where we do a Black History exhibition. And during that exhibition, we're able to bring a couple of our pieces. We're able to share the pieces with the students and the faculty and staff over at Lovett. And then, of course, we bring the community in for a talk during Black History Month. So the value, in fact, we had an auction with little kids bid on works. And I mean, you'd be surprised at how much these kids were bidding. One young man in the front of the audience, his mom was like, hey, that's your allowance money. He got up to, I think, $300. He paid $300 for a piece. And these were pieces that the kids actually created that were part of our chapter, right? So that intrinsic value for me is something that I find value in. When I see that in the room and I say, okay, these kids are now looking at art, they're saying, I would pay $300 for that piece of art. That meant I left the school feeling good that day. When we talk about the true commodification of art, in terms of like pushing it to the next level, Russell Goings again was a man who, during that time in New York, he said, how are we going to move the decimal point to the right? We need to know how to learn how to move the decimal point to the right. So you take your collection, you share your collection, you make sure that people who are seeing your collection are the right people, they can take it and can write about it. Lynn Marshall Linnemeyer is an artist that we have in our collection. This young lady here was one of the first artists that we collected at the Vista Gallery. And we collected which piece was that? It was the rice raft. Yes. The women on the rice raft.
Oh yeah, rice raft, South Carolina.
That was it, yeah, right? So that piece, Lynn, when you come into our home, it's in the living room to the right. So it's one of the first pieces that you see. So it anchors that room. It anchors that room. I mean, so those things for us, when we're able to bring people into our home and we can have conversations around the art, that's where the value for us comes in. Now, of course, I really want to, Deborah Roberts in my collection. I really want to Barber in my collection. Oh, I'm sorry. I yield.
Fahamu, can I add something?
Yeah, for sure.
It just hit me, y'all. He hit it on the head. It's about the story. You know what I'm saying? The value is about the story that the artist is telling and what that is worth to you. You know what I'm saying? So if you see something, you like it, you're interested, you don't know if you really like it until you find out why it exists. If it's just something somebody painted and it's just, it's cute, it's sexy or whatever, that's fleeting, right? But if it's a story behind it and this story just compels your heart, freezes you, you know what I'm saying? It's just like, man, nothing else matters. What's that story worth to you? That's how you, that's a very long syllable word. What you say, commoditization? How did you say it? Say it again.
Commoditization.
Commoditization. That's how you commoditize. Commodify that though. You know what I mean? Seriously, when you have that, and you have that conversation, and you know that you own that, that is the value. That's the true value. Am I right? Anything else that comes along for the ride, it's like a child who's now all-star, playing, but he started little pee-wee football, you know what I'm saying? But now he's an all-star in high school. You already in love with it. It don't even matter. You own the story now. You're a part of the story because you can now look at this every day and relive it and share it the way that God told you.
We're gonna start to, the landing gear is down. We're bringing this thing, to the tarmac. If you guys are like me, I'm an artist as well, but I also am an avid art collector. I've been collecting art since I was in college, trading works with, my classmates and stuff like that. If y'all are like me, there's arguments in your house about where we gonna put this. But that doesn't stop, right? That doesn't stop the passion and desire of wanting to continue to build on and add on to that story. I could name half a dozen artists whose works I want to collect, but my wife will not let me bring anything else home. But I'd like to know who's on your list. I know you dropped a couple names already, but who's on your list? Who are you looking at? Who are you excited about? Like, whose story is giving you that, I need it? Like, who does that look like for all of you?
Grace Keys is at the top of our list.
Grace Keys.
And it has been too long, but I'm prayerful that 2024 is the year if it doesn't happen before 2023 is over.
All right.
I always want to carry a walker.
Okay.
Now I know there's some people in this room that own several, but I'm just saying, like, one of these days, like, I would love to own a carry a walker. Especially my favorite artist. And R.I.P. to her father.
Yes, that's a piece.
Yeah, I'm happy.
I would say for Basil Kincaid is one.
Nice,
I
yeah.
love Basil and his work. We actually have a print, but I would love an original.
Can I tell you something? I had an original Basil quilt.
You did?
Yes. Remember that?
What happened?
When my studio burned down.
Well, wait till maybe we can do like a 2-for-1. And then Alteron's Gumby, he's another one that I really love.
I think at the top of my list is Harmonia Rosales. I ain't been able to stop thinking about her work.
I'm a big fan of Derek Adams. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Derek Adams. Hebrew Brantley, I see, the Galbreaths have Hebrew in their collection. But of course, we love, our collection really is based on Southeastern artists. Artists in the Southeast, and Kevin Cole helped me clarify that. Just by walking through our house, he was like, you got something going on here, and it just happened to be exactly, you hit the nail on the head. But I do want to share something that I think is really important too, because we have all these artists in the room. One of the things that I think that's really important about collecting is really to get to know the artists. Because these people I want to humanize these people because, we have these things again, and they're beautiful. But, we actually can reach out and touch these people. We can reach out and touch them. And I say it all the time, I feel like I'm living through the Harlem Renaissance, where because I'm in Atlanta, I'm in a city where you guys are concentrated. And it's amazing to be able to walk down the street and see you, and say, wow, And so, to Zach's point, when we talk about the stories that we're sharing, we have to know the artist and where it came from. So having you guys come into our home, we gotta say his name, Radcliffe.
Radcliffe, baby.
We gotta say his name, Mr. Larry Walker.
Yes.
Walker, yes.
Come into our home and then feel the spirit of our collection, and then of course tell us about, his piece, but also feel the spirit of all the other artists that are in the room. It adds value. That's my value. That's where I'm getting my value from, present. And I'll wait for that return on the end, We've collected a few, then I think we'll get that return.
Just before we deplane, I'd like to ask y'all to, maybe just briefly remark, what have you thought about the plan for your collection post you being here? What does that look like, right? Because that's another part of the story, right? That's another reason why, collections become so significant, is because they do become institutionalized in a certain kind of way. Many times they're donated to institutions, many times institutions are built around them. So have you put any thought into the life of your collection beyond you?
For us, I'm prayerful that family members will have some of these pieces to live with and enjoy like we have. But to be planted a seed that we hadn't considered, I would be grateful for ADAMA to house some of these pieces from this collection when we're no longer here and ADAMA's doing what ADAMA does.
Ashe?
No, I don't think we've I think we're early enough in our journey that we have not thought that far in the future. But I do know that it's, very important. I'm thinking about, maybe HBCUs, maybe, loaning our work or giving it, having it on display to, my alma mater. So that might be a thought.
What's your alma mater? Shout it out.
North Carolina A&T.
Woo!
Hey,
My dad, my family.
We have talked about this at length and talked about a couple different things that we would like to see, but of course I donated to a HBCU being Clark Atlanta. Have any of you gone to Clark Atlanta University's amazing, the treasure trove of African American art? I would love to see us donate a portion of that. That's my alma mater, so I would love to see that. Of course, I would like to put some in a trust for my family, and hopefully be able to have the work shown in different exhibitions and galleries throughout the country and abroad.
Well, you touched on it, Kim. Carrie Davis, a lot of people here are familiar with Carrie. Carrie Davis is and his wife's collection travels now, and I haven't seen it. I've seen the collection, but I haven't seen it while it's traveling, right? But I think that that's one of our hopes, is that we can put together something that could possibly, be shared with not just people here in the South, but West, North.
Thank you. Please give a hand for Zach and Robin, and of course, George and Sarah. Before we wrap up, please, by all means, stick around and take a look at the exhibition. Ask questions. Again, the number of the artists are here that you can speak to and talk to about their work. You can also speak to any of us here on the panel or any of our ADAMA people. All of my ADAMA team people, please throw your hands up wherever you are. We'd like to make sure that you guys are also aware of our upcoming fundraising gala. It's called Flowers and Seeds. It's going to be February 16th, and it'll be here at Pittsburgh Yards. And just kind of give you a quick and dirty. Flowers and Seeds, we give flowers to an artist of African descent who has dedicated their career to the work of the African diaspora but has gone largely under-recognized. And then we plant a seed by acknowledging an emerging artist who is up and coming and who's dedicated their practice to the African diaspora. We'll be honoring Dr. Arturo Lindsay. He will be our inaugural flowers recipient. And we'll be announcing the seed recipient very, very shortly. So we encourage you all to please buy tickets to attend the event. It's going to be out of this world. It's going to be amazing. There's also another card that shows where you can make a donation to ADAMA to support this type of programming. If you want to continue to see this kind of thing happen and see us grow, we love you. Thank you for being here. And the next exhibit will also open February 16th to coincide with the Flowers and Seeds Gala. It'll be right here. Big shout out to Jamila Crawford Pecou of Earth Candy Arts for food. Big shout out to Steph and Saint and the ones and twos. And yeah, it's party time. Thank y'all.
Thank you so